Good evening. I am Kelsey Wheaton, and this is my second oral interpretation. Tonight I will be reading a selection from Editha by William Dean Howells. I don't have a book copy, so here we go. In her room, she put together all her letters and gifts from Grierson, down to the withered petals of the first flower he had offered, with that timidity of his veiled in that irony of his. In the heart of the packet she enshrined her engagement ring, which she had restored to the pretty box he had brought it her in. Then she sat down, if not calmly yet strongly, and wrote, "George, I understood when you left me, but I think we had better emphasize your meaning, that if we cannot be one in everything, we had better be one in nothing. So I am sending these things for your keeping till you have made up your mind. I shall always love you, and therefore I shall never marry anyone else. But the man I marry must love his country first of all, and be able to say to me, I could not love thee, dear, so much, loved I not honor more. There is no honor above America with me. In this great hour there is no other honor. Your heart will make my words clear to you. I had never expected to say so much, but it has come upon me that I must say the utmost. Editha." She thought she had worded her letter well, worded it in a way that could not be bettered. All had been implied and nothing expressed. She had it ready to send with the packet she had tied with red, white, and blue ribbon, when it occurred to her that she was not just to him, that she was not giving him a fair chance. He had said he would go and think it over, and she was not waiting. She was pushing, threatening, compelling. That was not a woman's part. She must leave him free. She could not accept for her country or herself a forced sacrifice. In writing her letter she had satisfied the impulse from which it sprang. She could well afford to wait till he had thought it over. She put the packet and the letter by, and rested serene in the consciousness of having done what was laid upon her by her love itself to do, and yet used patience, mercy, justice. She had her reward. Grierson did not come to tea, but she had given him till morning, when late at night there came up from the village the sound of a fife and drum, with a tumult of voices, in shouting, singing, and laughing. The noise drew nearer and nearer. It reached the street end of the avenue. There it silenced itself, and one voice, the voice she knew best, rose over the silence. It fell. The air was filled with cheers. The fife and drums struck up, with the shouting, singing, and laughing again, but now retreating, and a single figure came hurrying up the avenue. She ran down to meet her lover and clung to him. He was very gay, and he put his arm around her with a boisterous laugh. "Well, you must call me Captain now, or Cap, if you prefer. That's what the boys call me. Yes, we've had a meeting at the town hall, and everyone has volunteered, and they selected me for captain, and I'm going to the war, the big war, the glorious war, the holy war ordained by the pocket providence that blesses butchery. Come along, let's tell the whole family about it. Call them from their downy beds, father, mother, Aunt Hitty, and all the folks." But when they mounted the veranda steps, he did not wait for a larger audience. He poured the story out upon Editha alone. I chose this selection for a couple of reasons. I am very familiar with Editha. I did my group project on Editha, and I thought this was a really interesting passage. I picked it primarily to focus on the letter that she writes to her fiancé, so I think that's the most important part to get from this. There's mention of the letter again later on, when Editha confronts George's mother about George's death in the war. It's revealed that not only did George read the letter that Editha wrote, but his mother read it too, and she was not happy about what she found. I don't blame her. I probably wouldn't have been either if I was her. So I think one of the most important things to get from this letter is that it says a lot about Editha's personality, especially what she does with the letter. It definitely says that she has very high expectations for George, as she tells him, and I quote the passage, the man I marry must love his country first of all, and be able to say to me, you know, I could not love thee, dear, so much loved I not honor more. There is no honor above America with me. And she's willing to break off their engagement over this, over the fact that he doesn't want to go to war. So it says that she has some pretty high expectations for him. It also shows how much she's been swept up into this mentality of, look at how glorious this war is. You know, she thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread, and there's a lot of ways she describes it. You know, she has described it as sacred and ordained by Providence. So she believes that what they're doing is right, and it shows how quickly she's been swept up by this whole let's go to war against Spain mentality. It also kind of reveals that she's a little bit self-centered. In particular, not so much the letter, but what she does with the letter. Instead of giving it to George, she stops and decides to keep it because she wants to make sure she's being fair to him and giving him the time to decide. And while that comes off as, you know, maybe being a little bit more rational, it's also kind of self-centered as the thought is going through her mind that she's being fair by not giving him this letter that says, hey, I'm ending our engagement because you and I don't agree on this. You know, she thinks she's being fair by holding off on giving him this letter. And really, that's pretty self-centered of her. And she also does stop to think that it's not a woman's place to be like that, but I don't really think but from her actions, I don't think she gave much thought to it beyond that. The letter also said something about, the letter also says a lot about, the fever war that was going on at the time of the Spanish-American War. You know, Editha has fallen prey to the perils of yellow journalism. She has come to believe that this war is what is the best thing. She believes that by undertaking this war, America is helping to free these oppressed Cuban citizens, which, as I've researched and discovered and presented on, they weren't actually all that repressed. That was a lie in yellow journalism. It just goes to prove how dangerous it is. Also, towards the end of the passage, we see that George gets swept up into this whole fervor of war as well. He's very against the war in the beginning. He refuses to go, and that's the point of Editha's letter, is she doesn't want to be with him if he will not go, because she thinks that this is the most important thing, and that he should be willing to go and serve his country. And if he's not, well, then why is she there? So, but he says later on that, he says that he's going to the war, the big war, the glorious war, the holy war ordained by the pocket providence that blesses butchery. So here he seems to be falling into the mentality that this war is the glorious thing, although that line about the pocket providence that blesses butchery, I think that might have been a little bit of a parting shot about how maybe not how he really feels about the war at this point, but that he still may have some doubts, despite the fact that he's now volunteered to go to war as a captain. I do believe they also mentioned that he was drunk when he decided on this, so maybe it's also a warning about don't get drunk and decide to go to war. It's not going to end badly for you, as we all know. George does not come home from the war. George dies overseas. So that was why I chose this. I also just find it kind of an interesting passage to read, how quickly George has changed his mind. Within the day, he's completely changed his mind. He's completely changed his thoughts about this war, and, what role he wants to play in it. And it's kind of interesting to observe. Now, this time I didn't have any music. I couldn't really think of anything that I thought went along with this piece really well. I will admit that I initially considered the possibility of Do You Hear the People Sing from Les Miserables, and then realized this was a little bit less let's start a revolution that this story was a little bit less let's start a revolution and a little bit more look at how awful the Spanish-American War was, and look at how self-centered people were about it and how much it was romanticized, because in the end Editha sees, herself as kind of a heroic figure because she has survived finding out that her fiancé has died, and George's mother even closes in on that while tearing into Editha at their meeting, and Editha can't seem to understand why George's mother is angry about how she sent him off to war and how she now thinks that she's to be pitied because he's died. Which also got me thinking about that, and keeping that in mind also had me thinking a little bit about a song that I know of. It's by a British band called Pythia. The song is called Army of the Damned, and there is a poem of sorts at the end that does talk about the horrors of war, and part of the very end of the poem is, "You smug-faced crowd with kindling eye who cheer when soldier lads march by, sneak home and pray you'll never know the hell where youth and laughter go." And that did remind me a little bit of what's going on in this story, but because it didn't particularly remind me of what happens in this part, I decided not to use it as background music. I was also worried that the lyrics of the song might get a little distract from the reading a little bit. Also, the song's very, very fast-tempoed, and I didn't want that to take away from the reading either. So, this time, no background music, but I think the piece stands on its own pretty well without any real need for background music. So, that is my oral interpretation of William Dean Howells' Editha, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.